is it that India can do more or new that it hasn't done already? Because that question is on top of our minds. I mean, we've been saying the same things, we've been doing the same things. There's no lack of proof against Pakistan.
Let's assume that the worst in this episode is over. And now India has to focus on soft balancing the whole disinformation narrative that comes from the neighboring country, and therefore controlling and managing narrative would require showcasing the broad basing of India's policy, India's narrative, India's strategy. And in that sense, such delegations of parliamentarians from across party lines going and engaging with major partners of India is something which is very important, because terrorism has to be fought at various levels. At the level of military response, which Prime Minister has clarified, any terror attack would be now seen as act of war. Nuclear blackmail will not work, and godfathers of terrorism will also be considered terrorists. It's a clear articulation of India's policy, but now again engaging different countries at different levels. In that sense, not just broad basing India's narrative, but also taking along, co-opting a whole lot of other party leaders and showcasing that party which is ruling today has confidence that they can go and speak on India's behalf in several other international platforms, gives a collective narrative which makes it perhaps far more effective and trustworthy in that sense. And particularly today with emerging India, fifth largest economy and so on, largest population country, world today expects India to contribute to global narratives, not just of its own problems of terrorism, but how terrorism has to be tackled at global level. And I dare say last 2 decades have seen quite a disarray in that consensus in fighting against terrorism. And you have now regimes in Syria and Afghanistan which are kind of an aberration if you're looking at how to fight terrorism. And so India's responsibilities again in responding to global expectations, from listening to what India wants to collectively stand for and say, also mean that India doesn't have to simply stop on India-Pakistan border, has to take that issue around the world. You remember how global war on terrorism narrative was built by United States post 9/11. And India as an emerging power has a similar, take now to, do and take forward to this whole build narrative, not just isolating Pakistan and, sort of ensuring that Pakistan is seen in that light as a breeding ground of terrorism, but also how India can showcase what it can do to dealing with global terrorism as such. And in that sense, taking all party leadership along is something which is very significant. It has happened before, but today I think our challenges are very different because of the whole onslaught of information from social media, legacy media, television, radio, and so on. So much onslaught means that disinformation can become a very significant challenge in how sanity has to be communicated as to what India stands for. And in that sense, these cross-party delegations, I think, is an important step, but they have to deal with very different challenges today than, let's say, it happened earlier in earlier decades.
Yes.
There were very limited
Can I
challenges
just
there.
say,